All right, guys, check it out, man. We are at MGM Detroit Giraffe Weekend. Yesterday was a hell of a day. We had a good time. I got my boy Mike Stearns here from New York, Buffalo.
Say Detroit, gotta start, man.
24 NFL draft.
Blue chip difference makers on this roster for the Arizona Cardinals.
Ohio State.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a great day for us. You guys got a shutdown corner. We fucking traded our pick. So.
Yeah, I can't believe that. That was crazy.
Yeah, it was very anticlimactic waiting for the end of the draft to be like, yeah, you get no one.
And to the Chiefs again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Last time this happened, Patrick Mahomes went to the Chiefs. A bad day for Buffalo.
Yeah. Wasn't great.
Right. Awesome. Well, hey, let's talk about marketing, right? There's so much noise in our industry about marketing. SEO is dying, PPC is not working, marketing companies are, signing you up and scamming, and they have a bad rap and kind of a bad name.
Yeah.
So let's dig into some of that stuff.
Sure.
SEO. What do you see?
I see that it changes consistently, right? And I see that, you kind of had mentioned about like the reputation of marketing companies and people signing up and not getting things, et cetera. And we work with a lot of contractors, and we have for a very long time. And you have to go in with the expectation like it's going to take time, right?
Sure.
And the problem with that is that both companies are going to tell you that. The company that's doing a shit ton of things to build your organic visibility, and the company that's doing nothing and just taking money from you,
Sure.
right? They're both going to say the same
Absolutely.
thing. But success leaves clues, right? So if you're running an SEO campaign, you can go into like your Google Search Console account, and you can see if your impressions are rising. Like your impressions are how many times your website is being populated onto a search engine result page. Page 1, page 3, page 5, right? The idea is we want more impressions because we'll get more clicks as a result of the increased visibility. So like that's one way you could look and be like, hey, if we're 3 months into an SEO campaign and they're telling me be patient, like, is there anything happening?
Right.
Obviously, like content being created. Are they creating consistent content? Do you see that content? Like that's one of the most tangible components for a contractor with an SEO campaign is like, just look at content, right?
Sure.
Have them send what content they're putting out. AI's changed SEO. I don't think that we have a very good understanding as to how exactly, because the golden pitch right now is you could do it yourself. You don't have to do a damn thing. We could do 500 blogs in 4 hours,
right.
And it's going to be fantastic. Like the problem with that is, one, you got to make sure it's unique content, and you got to make sure it's factually correct. You got to make sure it's not plagiarized. And like these three things happen all the time with AI. And that's not to say there's not a place for it, but you have to be very careful as far as what you're putting out, because it can have the exact opposite reaction as far as how your reader, your target market, is perceiving you when they're viewing that content if you're giving them shitty information, right? Let's say we get them to the website and they're reading something and they go to 3 other contractors and their website says something completely different, but all of those are consistent. They're going to look at your company like,
Sure.
And the other thing as far as SEO, this is very long-winded, but I think it's important. As far as like the content and like getting good quality content out consistently, it's super important. Google cares about the user experience, right?
Sure.
That's all they give a shit about. Because the better the user experience, the more people that come back, the more they can charge you for Google Ads, them for Google Ads, right? And that's a huge revenue source for them. So they care about the user experience. So right now what we're experiencing with AI is just an inundation of content, right? Written content, blogs, things like that. So I think the way to really stand out is like to have deep, thoughtful, unique content consistently. And that's like one facet of SEO that's going to help you move the needle organically.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I think, when you touched on patience, and everybody wants leads now, right? And when you're working with a marketing company, I kind of think of it like when you're working with when you're working with a good marketing company, right? I kind of think of it like, when you're flipping a house, right? You're buying a piece of shit, and then you got to go in and you got to renovate it. So it's going to cost you some money, right? You got to renovate it, and then you got to wait while the different contractors come in and renovate this house to make it look pretty before you put it out to sell, right? And that's kind of how the SEO, like that's kind of how my brain operates with SEO, where it's like, hey, I'm going to purchase this as an upfront investment, right? I'm going to let it be renovated, and then I'm going to let it sell, right? Yeah. And I think a lot what happens is people just want the leads right away. And though PPC is a strategy for that, SEO is that long-term gain.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you. It's one of those things like patience is a virtue, and no matter what type of expectation you set, I get it. Like if you're investing with a good marketing company, you're investing a lot of money into something that you're not seeing results from. So no matter how well that expectation set up front, like it's going to take time. Don't expect results for the first year, that type of thing. That fourth or fifth draft hits, it's like bang, the car gets banged together. You're like, fuck, dude, like this shit ain't working.
Yeah.
Like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
like, it's our job to, okay, I understand like you feel that way, but let's go back to what we talked about. Let's show you everything that we've been doing.
Yeah.
Let's show you things like your Search Console account, your Google Analytics, and like show you the progressions that are being made. It's not the 60-yard chunk gain to the house for a touchdown that we want right now, but like, we're wearing the defense down. Right?
Yep.
It's like Derrick Henry in the first three quarters, so that in the fourth quarter he could spring that long run and take the game.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. No, that's great. One thing that hats off to you is like working with you is there's so much transparency. And the company I was with prior, I wasn't able to look at my Google account, like my own analytics, my Search Console, right? Like I got a written report or like some digital report, right? That wasn't Google. And I think that's a big thing, like for us as contractors, is we want to make sure this big investment that we're investing. I mean, marketing's one of the biggest expenses that we have, right?
Yep.
And I think any company that does residential construction and they're trying to scale, like marketing is that's a part of branding, and that's everything, right? And the Google expense and the SEO expense is so high to compete in all these areas and for these keywords. That transparency is it's huge. Like we want to see the numbers. Like we want to see that those graphs where the trajectory is going high, or there's different metrics. Is that like, I mean, from you seeing other companies and being in that space, is this a thing where companies kind of hide behind the actual analytics?
Yeah, unfortunately. I think a lot of companies do, and it gives them control, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few things that you don't ever want to do if you're outsourcing your marketing to somebody. Like you never want to have them buy your domain for you, right? Because what that means, they're usually going to purchase the domain. If you ever try to leave, all your SEO work is tied to that domain. Now they've got you at gunpoint for your information. And then it's the same thing with your analytics, your Search Console account, your Google Ad account. The Google ads, it's not always like, I don't think it's them being malevolent, like saying, typically what happens is like they have an agency account and they run all their ads out of that one account. It's kind of passed through. They charge you, go right to Google. The problem with it is there's not that transparency. So if I tell you, Eric, we have an agreed upon ad budget of $10,000 a month, you've got to pay me the 10 grand plus my management fee and take me at face value, right? Now there's like third-party softwares that I can sync up to Google Ads to create like a report you were talking about, and I can inflate those stats, right? I can show like, hey, make it a 15% increase across the board for impressions, click-through rate, money spent. So I always, knowing the trepidation that the folks that we want to work with have towards marketing companies and things like that, I always want to start out with like the most transparent approach, and then maintain that throughout the experience. So like, let's make sure that you have admin access to everything that you do, you own, things like that, whether it's analytics, Search Console, ads, your website. Because I think that's best. I think it's like, those are your assets, and there's no company, no matter like what unfolds, that should have you by the balls to say like, you can't have this.
Sure. I mean, we're paying for it, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it shouldn't be held hostage. If we're paying for it, then why shouldn't it be ours?
Right.
Right, to some extent.
Yeah, I agree.
What you brought up a good point. Like, what are like the people that are watching? What should they be looking for when they're researching marketing companies? Now I know, working with just like working with me, like we come with value, right? We have a track record, we have reviews, we have a network, right? So these guys are a little bit smaller. They're not ready to take that big step yet and commit. Like, how can you help guide them to make sure they're not going to get burnt in the early years when they're just trying to get going and dealing with a lower budget?
Yeah, I would say like education is really important, right? A lot of the times, like most of our conversations when a client's coming in is, I've worked with several marketing companies, we got fucked. Yeah. Yeah, we got taken advantage of. We got burnt, right? And the problem is, it's like, I always tell the story, it's kind of like me when I was 19 years old, I had like a 6-month-old daughter. I had this shitty car, and like there was like a vibration in the front end, and it was like a 20-year-old Honda Accord. And I take it to the mechanic, and they're like, it's gonna be $3,000.
Right.
Like, why?
Yeah, right.
Why is it gonna be $3,000? And like, what is the likelihood that like this wheel falls off and we both die if I don't get this fixed today, right? And it's like, I have no subject matter expertise to be able to fact check or verify anything that he's telling me.
Right.
I just gotta hope that like he's gonna be a decent person. I don't like that feeling. I don't want that for you.
Right.
So like, take some time and be intentional about becoming educated, right? And there's a lot of great resources. I know I put out a ton of content. Tim at Hook Agency puts out some good content as well. But find somebody that whose content you start consuming, you enjoy consuming their content, and then start working on those things. A lot of the times I get people that reach out to me, they're doing $500,000, $750,000. They're like, hey, I want a website, I want to do SEO. It's like, that's usually not the right time. There's never a wrong time for SEO, so to speak, but like to hire a legitimate marketing agency to perform like consistent SEO, it's not the time. It might not be the time to build a fully custom site. But what you could do is you could research how to build a Squarespace site. You could look at any website that we build and like what pages we build and the site structure and things like that. And maybe it's not the exact same, but it's going to give you a much stronger foundation to build off of than the guy who's telling you he's going to do the exact same thing as Ascend for a quarter of the price, because he's usually going to build you like a 5-page website. It's going to be a bunch of services smashed on one page, and it's not going to be great. And you're going to end up having to rebuild it anyways.
Yeah, and I think you can't be hypocritical either. You can't tell a homeowner like, hey, you need to buy this roof from me because I'm better, and these lower price guys are not going to do as good of a job, and then think that a media company that's lower prices, I mean, it's kind of like, that's hypocritical, right? Like,
yeah.
Isn't that like, you paint that scenario in your head for it to fit for yourself, but if you step back and really look at it and analyze it, right? Like, it's hypocritical, right? Like,
so when you first reached out to me, I was in a position to help you, right? We were at full capacity. I couldn't take you on, and I was upset because I really wanted to work with you. But then, months later, 6 months, 8 months later, you hit me up, and like we were able to put the band together. And I was very excited. But when we were talking, I was like, I gave you the example. It's like laying over a roof on a bunch of shingles where the decking is smoked. Shingles are fucked, right? Like, there's no longevity there, and it's not what your homeowner wants. It might look good for a few days, few weeks, few months, maybe, but right? But like, those underlying problems are going to surface, and that's the same thing with it's not just marketing, roofing. It's any fucking industry, right? There's a lot of people that just take shortcuts. They don't do things the right way, and for the people that do, it takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more human capital, and those hours are paid for, and like that's where the added expense comes in, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think the hardest thing for me to deal with, and I'm sure other guys too, is like, it's so like anything non-tangible. Like, we're so used to tangible assets, and marketing's a non-tangible asset. Like you said with the mechanic, when I take my truck in or whatever, like, I don't know anything, right? Like, and I don't want to know, right? I just want you to fix it,
please.
So I think people kind of look at it the same way. Like, I don't know what's happening. I just fix it and give me leads. But the hard thing is that it's a non-tangible thing. Like, I can't look at it. I can't tell. I can't inspect it and see if, hey, was this done right? All right. I mean, I can look at the website, but I mean, for me, and I told you this when you were building mine, like, I don't really care what the website looks like. It can be a black page for all I care, as long as it converts, right? Like, I don't care. And it's just a hard thing to wrap around, something you know nothing about, and you can't inspect, and you can't see, and you can't hold. It's just, it's like a stockbroker, right?
Yeah, and I can see how that'd be very uncomfortable. If it were me making the decision on something like that, like, typically, marketing's different because it's like an ongoing relationship, right? So if somebody's like, oh, we help roofers, or we do this, or this person's really good at this, have a conversation with them. First of all, see if like you guys jive, right? Mm-hmm. I tell people all the time, I'm like, you might talk to me for 10 minutes and be like, fuck this guy, I never want to talk to him again. Like, I'm not your flavor. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might talk to me like, I love it. Like, let me pay you for a consultation. Like, let's figure out all the shit within my business, and we're going to work together. Sure. That's fine too. Sure. Love it. So like, make sure that you guys jive from a personality perspective. Ask them to speak to people, right? Like, ask them for 3 people to speak to. One that's been, with them for less than 6 months. Ones that have been with them for like 6 months to a year and a half, and one that's been with them for a couple years or more. Yeah. Right? So it's not just a bunch of fanboys that have been with them for 30 days who've been promised the world that are endorsing them, right?
Right.
Show that you can sustain that relationship and that excitement, because that's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. No matter what business you're in. When you're in a recurring relationship where like there's consistently expectations that have to be hit, the longer time passes, I feel like the less likely they are to be as enthusiastic. So if you have a company that can consistently maintain that standard throughout the longevity of that relationship, like that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And that's probably a pretty good indicator that they're a good strategic partner.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's another point that is missed. You know, whenever I sign up for a new service, I want names. I want to talk to people like, who do I know in this network that you've worked with for a short, mid, and long term that can show me that you're worth this money.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it so many times where it's like, we worked with hundreds of roofing contractors across the U.S.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I'll have people call me like, I was going to work with these folks, but I asked them to give me a couple references. They said they worked with hundreds. They couldn't give me any. And then they said there was non-disclosures and there was, there were all these things. I was like, okay.
Right.
I was like, that sounds
seen that coming from a mile away, right?
Weird. Like I said, it's just like any other industry, man. It's tough, but there's some good ones out there. But you have to do your due diligence, and like you have to invest your time on a consistent basis to help feed the machine. And what I mean by that is we can do everything in our power and be as wildly successful as possible from the lead gen side, from the marketing side. But then there's things on the business owner side that they have to do as well, and like they have to consistently manage their team, revisit their processes, see where things are breaking down. I can look at your dashboard and say, you know what? We're averaging a lead cost of $150. We got 35 leads last month. We're right on target. Things are fantastic. And then you could call me a week later and be like, Mike, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, what's up, man? Like, it's because we're operating off the KPIs. Right. And you'd be like, dude, we got 17 calls for fascia in the last 3 weeks.
Right.
We're thinking shit's good. You're like, this is bad. Like, let's change it. Oh, okay. But that comes down to communication. Conversely, we could look at it and be like, lead cost is $248. It's a fucking problem right now. You could be like, dude, we just closed at 63% this month for our sales reps. We're fucking killed. They're, 90% of them are replacements. Like, whatever you're doing, don't ever stop. Yeah. But unless we know and we have that communication, we're going to start making changes to something that's working very, very well, just because the KPIs can be misleading and they don't tell the whole story.
Yeah, I love that. I think communication is huge. Man, the stuff that I've dealt with in the past with marketing companies, and you can't get answers, and you can't, you can't navigate through the problems, and they're like, oh, you got 45 conversions. It's like, okay, cool. Like, most of them are spam and repeat customers, and like, how much are actually like, I'm not asking you to close my leads, just get me the leads that I'm paying for and show me, and then let's work together. Let's communicate and work through this, right? Until we get in sync and we can kind of push the needle forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that comes up, I refer you as many people as I can, but I know that's been a struggle in the past where people have called me and been like, man, like I talked to Mike, I want to work with Mike, but he wants to rebuild my website, right? And that's a big thing for people that think or maybe their website is operating great. Why do most of the time when you take a client, or maybe all the time, when you take a client on, is it important to rebuild the website?
Yeah. So like I have this really shitty tattoo that I got when I was 18, right?
Right.
And like I've called 4 people and I can't get the sleeve done because they can't cover this up.
Right.
Okay. It's a similar concept, right? So when I first started the company, we did it like 2 or 3 times where somebody had a website built elsewhere, and I'm hungry for business. I'm like, let's get it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what happened is like foundationally, like your website structure is really important. Like, what pages do you have? How many pages, what pages do you have? How are they categorized? Like, how are they interlinked? Things like that. So let's just talk about like the number of pages and like most websites we would get are like, okay, we've got a home, we got an about us, we got one service page with all of our services listed, maybe a couple hundred words for each, maybe a couple syllables. I mean, it's crazy. Like a contact form. So then what we do is like on the front end, before we launch the campaign, we've got to build out 30 pages of content. Like, and I'm not getting paid for that, right? And not to mention, like my team, we code our sites from scratch. They're custom sites, right? So it gives us a ton of latitude from the design side. So it caused a mutiny with my development team because they like to do the shit the way they do it and like top notch, not working within the confines of like a drag and drop website builder. Like, there's nothing wrong with a drag and drop website builder, but like it's like for people that like elite craftsmanship, there's certain tools they're going to use and not use. There's certain materials they're going to use and not use.
Sure.
It's the same thing, right?
Sure.
So between like what we had lost as far as like making sure we got the website up to snuff and like my team hating it, it just didn't make sense.
Sure. No, I think that's huge. You know, when we're looking at this as an investment and somebody hires you and they believe in you, right? And they want you to take their business to the next level. They have to understand that you need all those tools in order to do that,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't be missing a wrench and then, you know, like show up with a toolbox, right? Like I understand that the upfront, rephrase that. I understand like the upfront investment may be more than people want to spend.
Oh yeah.
But in the end, like what kind of results are you trying to get? You know, and I think that's a hard thing to push through sometimes, right? It's
For
a
sure.
hard thing to communicate. Where, again, like I'm sure every contractor out there has been burned by somebody, right? Like the biggest thing in my company is everybody wants to tell me something. There's subscriptions up the ass. I mean, there's emails and people walking in, and I mean the amount of stuff to sign up for is just incredible.
Yeah.
Right. So because of being beat up so many times, anytime there's something that comes across my desk that I'm like, okay, I'm somewhat interested, but I'm skeptical, but I want to know about it. You just like that commitment's big.
Oh yeah.
It's a big commitment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially if you just did it. Like before I worked with you, I had built my website less than 12 months, right? And I had spent 5 figures to build this thing. 10 months later, I built another one.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's tough. But I was like, hey man, like I get it. Like I'm willing to take this journey and invest this so that I can reap the benefits at the end.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a great situation when that happens, and it happens more than I'd like to see it, honestly. And there's not much that's going to make anyone feel better about it.
Right.
You know, and so like our process to become a client is typically like we have an intro call. It's like 10, 15 minutes. Make sure that we don't hate each other and we can see ourselves working together.
Yeah.
Then we do a paid consult. So the reason why I did that is like I don't want a ton of salespeople necessarily. I have trepidation about hiring a bunch of salespeople because I know they're not gonna care about the brand the way I do and protect it. It's really hard to keep your reputation.
Yeah.
Right. It takes one thing, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be malicious. You can forget to mention something. Next thing you know, it gets taken as you try to take advantage of me. And I'm just nervous about that.
Yeah. No.
Maybe this is part of like the delegation and like letting go of the vine thing that we talked about earlier. Yeah. Maybe I need to work on it. There's opportunity for growth always.
Right.
So the reason why I say that it's important, I get people even that are like, they want to hear about pricing before I give them the consult, right? I'm like, I mean, I can give you the pricing. You're probably going to run in the other direction.
Of course.
I'm like, but if you want it, I'll give it to you. I'm like, the consultation, whether you've done no revenue yet or you're at 3 million trying to get to 5, like I've worked with hundreds of contractors from, pre-revenue, 20 million plus, like everything in between, residential, commercial split, like storm, retail. Yeah. And I've always worked very closely with my clients. So I've ridden shotgun, so to speak, watching the chef make the omelets, and they broke a lot of fucking eggs to make those omelets, right?
Sure.
So like, the benefit for me is like I get to see these things, what works, what doesn't work, and like contextually and what type of business and where it is, like what has helped people become successful and help people really knock down that learning curve, which is, for me, I feel like it's incredible value. And we also talk about like CRM, what type of automations are you using, process stuff, like there's how to hold a marketing company accountable. There's so much value in it. But people don't want that either. Like I was like, well, I'm like, do you want me to get on a 20-minute sales call with you and just, tell you how great we are? Like we could, I could do it.
Right.
I'm like, but there's no value there. I'm like, whether you leave this conversation buying from us or not, you're going to have so much shit that you can enact in your business. We're going to help you optimize your Google business profile, your local service account. Like there's going to be so much value that if you end up buying something, we'll credit it towards you. Like,
Yeah.
It's
For sure.
But I don't know. It's, I love what I do. I could say that.
Yeah.
And then that's.
No, I think it's so cool. And last thing I want to touch on here and wrap this up is you talked about reputation. And I showed you, I know we shared this when we just shot this video, but I showed you something where somebody asked for a roofer in one of the local Facebook groups. There's 22,000 people, and my name's just mentioned over and over, and I'm super grateful for that. But on the reverse side, like when somebody's in, like the Roofing Insights group or whatever, and they mention website or marketing, it's like Mike, right? Like you talked about, reputation in your name, and your name. I always tell people it's like you get one, right? It's so important to protect that name.
Yeah.
And when you go on to, you go on Facebook and like the Roofing Insights page, for example, people ask for a website builder or help with or online marketing, and your name comes up. Like, how do you get to that place? And this is whether it's, your roofing company or, you personally. Like, how did you work through to get to that place where people just start commenting?
Yeah.
Using you?
It's a really good question, and I think this is something that, I don't care what type of business you run, but especially if you're running a roofing business, you should be intentional about doing this. So the first thing is you have a prospective customer that has a problem and you have a solution, right? So we got to get them to know that they have the problem and sell them the solution. This is the solution we offer. And when I say sell, I use that term loosely. You've got to demonstrate to them how you can help them. Okay. From there, like, you have to do a good job, right?
You have to.
Got to do a good job. Communicate with them, set good expectations, follow through on those expectations, go above and beyond for them, make it fucking A+ every step of the way. Now you got to ask them, right? Like, you got to, ask them, like, would you, like, how was your experience? It was good. You guys did a great job. Love that you guys communicated. That's good. What do you think about the install? Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm really glad you chose the Onyx shingle. Like, it really makes your trim pop. Like, it looks beautiful. Like, curb appeal wise, couldn't have done a better job. Okay, would you do me a small favor? Oh yeah, absolutely. What do you need? I'm gonna do a walk around and just do one last walkthrough. Make sure we got all the I's dotted, T's crossed. Can you, would you be so kind as to just share your experience on Google while we do this?
Yeah.
Text them the link right then and there. Bang. Now you create an expectation and a sense of urgency because you're going above and beyond them. So, the norm of reciprocity, they want to do something for you.
Absolutely.
And they've committed to doing you a favor. And that favor is they're going to leave you that review by the time you get back because you're going above and beyond for them again, right? So if somebody you cared about needed a roof, like, who would you send them to? We'd send them to you guys. Okay, fantastic. Hey, what I've found, and thank you for that, like, as a small business in the local community, our reputation means everything to us. Like, we survive off of reviews. It's helped grow our business. And, like, how hard it was to find a contractor you could trust. We're really glad that you chose us to work on your home. And we wanted to make sure that problem is as infrequent as possible in the community. The way that we've found to be very successful with that and helping other people is, like, there's local community groups on Facebook. I'm going to send you an invite to 3 that are right in your neighborhood. You can join them. Like, outside of just referring us, there's a ton of good information in these groups as far as what's going on in the community, the neighborhood, things like that. So I want you to be a part of it. And, I'm not asking you to spend a ton of time, like, helping us, but if you happen to see somebody asking for a roofing contractor and you want to share the experience, like, fantastic. We would really appreciate it. It means the world to us. And, like, that's how I would position it in the roofing side. And, like, it's no different when, like, I had my marketing company in the very beginning. You got to set the expectation of what they can expect. You got to deliver on those expectations every step of the way. You got to ask. Like, usually when people are coming on board now, I'm like, by the way, like, I ask a couple things. Like, we're going to do what we do. We're going to knock it out of the park for you. I want your credit card to clear. And, like, when you see people asking on Facebook or anywhere else about website, SEO, Google Ads, like, I want you to share your experience. And I want you to be nothing but honest.
Yeah.
Be very descriptive. Please.
Yeah.
As descriptive as possible.
Right.
Because I feel very confident that, like, not only, like, the production of things that we do, but the experience that they get is just unmatched. Right. So I want people to talk about it as much as they can.
Yeah. No, it's been so big on our end too. I just think it's cool. I think it's you just do a great job, and communication's always awesome. And I'm happy that we work together. And
me too, man.
It's been an awesome ride. Like, right from the get-go, like, you could start seeing, like, stuff moving. And I don't know if it's where I was positioned, and then you had to fix it all and move it, but it's always been there, and the communication's always been there, and that's how I treat my customers too. So it's like we have that link where it's like, hey, we kind of take care of each other the same way, right? So I just think it's rare, and I think it's cool that we can really make an impact in helping people build their businesses.
Fuck yeah, dude. Couldn't agree more.
Hell yeah.
I appreciate you having me.